Sue Shaw's with me here in the studio this morning from Roskill. Sue, good to see you. Good morning.
Hello, great to be here.
Your recent report taking a look at natural and synthetic graphite. What are your expectations around the big areas of growth over the next 10 years?
Well, out to 2028, we expect batteries to underpin most of the growth throughout the graphite industry. They really are driving the industry in an upward direction. We are expecting around 28% per year growth in lithium-ion batteries over the next decade, and that will drive considerable consumption growth for graphite. That growth will be in both the natural and synthetic sides of the industry. Normally those two products are quite discrete in the applications in which they're used, but in batteries, in lithium-ion batteries, where they're used within the anode as anode material, in that particular application, they compete to a certain extent. So natural and synthetic graphite are used often as blends. They're blended together with other materials as well, and that's so that you can have the best performance for your battery, maybe improve your battery life or your charging time, depending on the pick of your materials. So you'll be choosing the graphite type by the price and the performance of your end use application. So that is the large area of growth, but we're also expecting to see considerable growth in synthetic graphite from the synthetic graphite electrode industry. Now, this is a more traditional steel-based industry. Graphite has traditionally been based around steel, both with natural graphite in refractories, which are growing quite slowly, but we expect to see over 5% per year growth from electrodes, and that's because of the rapid shift in the Chinese steel industry towards different manufacturing methods, towards electric arc furnaces, which are using recycled steel, much less polluting, and they are using the synthetic graphite electrodes there, and that's been a big paradigm shift over the last couple of years.
And what about your expectations as far as the price? How's that going to develop?
So at the moment, the price has actually been slightly in decline over the last few months. We expect it to be quite weak over the next year or two, and that is for a couple of reasons, but mainly because of an influx of supply. So there has been a large new deposit opened by Sura Resources in Mozambique at the end of 2017, rapidly ramping up their production levels through last year. But also projects ramping up in Madagascar and throughout Africa, so they've helped to feed into supply, and we're really seeing a very large excess of supply. We've also seen within China there has been closures to plants in recent years in both the synthetic and the natural graphite side. Those closures have now been reopened through last year mostly, and we're seeing perhaps a move back to some of the traditional overcapacity that has plagued the industry there. And then on the demand side as well, there's a temporary issue this year where we're seeing a slight a fallback in demand from the batteries side. We are just a temporary slowdown in growth because of changes to incentives for electric vehicles in China. So as we are seeing them being halved in some areas to try and improve the efficiency or the performance of the vehicles that are actually being made, but that kind of policy is having a bit of a detrimental effect just as a temporary measure. So all those combined, we're seeing a slightly weaker growth, but in the long term we're expecting much more positive growth.
And you're expecting Africa to be the biggest source of new supply here, are you?
Absolutely. So going forward, Africa is going to become very interesting. There are other deposits as well in other areas of the world that are being developed. We're expecting to see just short of 2 million tonnes per year of potential capacity that could come online over the next decade on a global scale, from first stage development of projects. Now, not all of that will be realised, finalised, but that's still a considerable amount that's waiting to come on, and many of those projects have had time to become well developed and have offtake agreements. Now, around maybe 1.2 million tonnes of that per year is from African projects, and that's not including Syria Resources, who are already ramping up. So we will likely to see more in Africa, and that's because China will be looking to take on board more material from Africa. It's an ideal location shipping-wise, and China will be looking to supplement its own domestic production with imports.
So you can see China continuing to dominate the manufacturing chain here, can you?
Well, absolutely. So China already completely dominates the lithium-ion battery manufacturing chain. First of all of the production of intermediate product spherical graphite produced from natural flake, all of that is produced within China, processed in China at the moment on a commercial level. There are a few projects that are looking to develop this outside of China, but at the moment it's all still within China. And right through from there, from the graphite through the intermediate stages to the anode materials themselves and the battery production, that market is very sewn up by China. Now that means that China will be increasing its demand considerably for graphite over the next decade, and although it does have significant resources itself, there are questions over the grade and the size of flakes that it has, and also that its production costs are rising very quickly, mainly on the environmental side, also labour costs, energy costs, and so China and also the resources that China has are becoming deeper as they become more used up, they become more expensive to mine. So China has started to look abroad. It has started to import considerable amounts of material. As of last year, in 2017, there were hardly any imports. If you discount what it's bringing in sort of poor quality material from North Korea, there are hardly any imports until last year, and then suddenly we see 63,000 tonnes of imports. So it's really looking to change its position, and that's a trend that we expect to see going forward over the next decade.
You mentioned a moment ago about the environmental aspects. Is that going to have a big impact on the industry in the near term, do you reckon?
Yes, so we believe that environmental policy will be probably the most fundamental thing that will affect the industry going forward. So we've already experienced considerable closures in China in synthetic and natural graphite supply chains, and those have been because of an increasing awareness by the Chinese government that they wish to improve their pollution and get a grip on the industry, and that's across all industries, not just graphite. So that has not been given up on. China is still very, very adamant to push that further, and we are likely to see more closures, we believe, especially around the synthetic side. But as well as that, we're starting to see some closures in India now as well. We've seen a few plants there. Now it's not as widespread in terms of government coordination, but we are still seeing some things happen on a local level, so that's quite interesting. And environmental issues around the world are leading the industry. So in terms of the growth we've spoken about, electric vehicles are a move to be more environmentally friendly, as is the use of electric arc furnace steel for synthetic graphite electrodes. You're looking at recycling more. China has got rid of its poorer quality steel production since 2017. So all of that is a move in that direction. And then going forward, we're likely also to see some pressure coming in on the synthetic side from increased use of low sulfur feedstocks that are used in the production of synthetic graphite itself. So at the moment, the needle coke that's used to make it is used in other areas, and one of the feedstocks for needle coke is actually low sulfur fuel residues. So there may be some competition from the change in shipping policies, looking at using lower sulfur, less polluting fuels coming in over the next few years. So as we move with that, there may be some competition on the synthetic side as well. So yes, it's definitely environmental policy is going to be the one thing to look at over the next 10 years.
Sue, good to get your analysis. Thanks very much.
Thank you.